Good afternoon, everyone. Hurricane Irma remains a powerful storm, and we here in North Carolina are continuing to watch it closely. And our hearts go out to those who have been in the storm's immediate path and who are already picking up the pieces from it. We know how that is here. It's too soon to know It is too soon to know how North Carolina will exactly be impacted, but it is not too soon to get ready for it. North Carolina is preparing for Irma, and I'm encouraging families and businesses to prepare for it as well. We have a strong team here in our state, and they are ready for Irma and whatever impact that it may be. And they are tested and they are ready. I have with me on the stage here Secretary of Public Safety Eric Hooks. We have the Director of Emergency Management Mike Sprayberry just to my right. We have Nick Petro with the National Weather Service. I'm going to call on him in just a minute. We have Jim Trogdon, who is the Secretary of Transportation. We have Colonel Glenn McNeil, the Commander of the Highway Patrol, and we have Brigadier General Todd Hunt with the National Guard. All of them are working together in a coordinated effort with both federal and local authorities. Nick Petro is with the National Weather Service. So Nick, I'm going to call on you right now to give us an update on the storm track.
Thank you, Governor. The forecast is becoming clearer that North Carolina will see significant tropical storm or hurricane impacts Monday into Tuesday. So North Carolinians should be ready for heavy rain and inland wind damage that could result in downed trees and extended power outages. Now, further west across the mountains, that heavy rain could lead to flash flooding and mudslides, and also let's not forget about coastal areas as well. The track is, obviously inland and further west, but we can't overlook the coastal impacts, which will include heavy, dangerous surf. There could be some minor overwash, and that's also possible. And let's not forget about the rip currents as well. There's going to be dangerous rip currents during and leading up to the storm as well. So in terms of flooding, the flooding potential, localized flash flooding in the typical flood-prone areas, that's expected. However, longer-lasting, widespread flooding like we experienced last year with Matthew is not expected at this time. So the good news here is that fortunately we'll see some good weather today and right through the weekend. So that's a good opportunity to take advantage of the good weather to plan and finish your preparedness activities and activate your preparedness plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Our team will continue to stay in close contact with the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center for the latest forecast and the storm track and how it might affect North Carolina. I want to continue to stress that this storm can impact any part of North Carolina, all over our state, from the mountains to the coast. And that is why I declared a state of emergency effective 8 a.m. this morning for all 100 counties. We're preparing resources. We're putting response crews on standby. We're positioning resources across the state once we know where the most serious impacts will be. Our emergency operations are now activated. Emergency management staff will be here all weekend, and staff from FEMA will be joining us this weekend as well, because we want to get ready for recovery as well as for rescue. Our State Department of Transportation is getting ready as well. We're going to suspend all work crews and all lane closures as of 7 p.m. Friday to make it easier for people to evacuate. We know some people will be coming through North Carolina with evacuation, so that 7 p.m. work stoppage will give people the entire weekend without lane closures on our roads. We've also been in touch with our nonprofits. They have helped in the past to provide help, food, shelter in these disasters. And I cannot say enough about the great work that they do. This morning I spoke with the Red Cross and about their plans to provide support for our state. They are gearing up. You know, we've had many people in North Carolina go down to Texas to help with the devastation from Hurricane Harvey. And so we're working with our nonprofit partners to make sure that any resources that have been deployed to Texas that are no longer needed are brought back here. And I know our emergency teams have all been brought back from Texas, and they are rested and ready to go. So at this point, I'd like to ask Emergency Management Director Mike Sprayberry to provide any additional details that he might want to provide us. Mike?
Thank you, Governor. Again, like the Governor said, we are activated at a level 4 here at the State EOC. The State Emergency Response Team is working right now to develop a plan that will develop the full spectrum of disaster response resources so that we can have the right resources in the right place at the right time to decisively engage once the storm passes. To that end, we're going to put staging areas in Kinston, Greensboro, and Asheville. We're activating the National Guard. They're going to bring skill sets like search and rescue, sheltering, hasty road repair, debris clearance, power generation, and warehouse management. So we're bringing in about 310 soldiers right now, and we can flex and surge more if we need to. We're also making sure that all of our different resources across the state are activated and alert. That includes 7 urban search and rescue teams, 7 hazardous material teams. We have aviation teams that are ready, and as the Governor stated before, all of our search and rescue teams that were in Texas are now back in state. As of last night, they'll be ready to go. So we're getting ready for this to have a statewide response, because as you heard Mr. Petro talking about, right now the impacts could be felt anywhere in the state. So we must be ready to be decisive to roll out with the response. We've also been coordinating with the American Red Cross, just like the Governor also stated. We want to make sure that, you know, with all the disasters happening nationwide, that we have some additional folks that can step in and help. So we've been working closely with DHHS. We've been working closely with the National Guard, so we'll be able to have folks to assist in the shelters and operate as many as we need. Our federal partners are on the way. They'll be here Sunday. We already have a federal liaison office from their regional office down in Atlanta, so we are working very closely with them to make sure that we can reach back and get federal resources as needed. And as a final note, I want to tell you that we are currently planning for the recovery. So once the storm leaves and we're through with response operations, we can segue smoothly into a recovery and to try to identify any housing needs for people that are displaced from whatever the storm brings us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for your leadership. We know that your team will be ready for whatever this storm brings. And as Mike explained, state and local government are getting ready for this, but we want people to get ready as well. Previous disasters have shown us that those who prepare are more likely to recover more quickly. So we encourage people to make a plan, know where you would evacuate, know your route, update your emergency supply kit with the water and non-perishable food and flashlights and batteries and all the things that you need for that. Make sure that you are ready for this. Make sure that you listen for weather reports. And I'm very grateful that we have readync.org, which is a website and also a mobile app that will give you all kinds of information about what you need to do. Finally, I know people feel that they want to give and want to help, and financial contributions are welcome to the nonprofits. But as for actual supplies or materials, we're asking that you not do that yet until we know exactly where the impact is and where it needs to go. So we'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have. I'll let Mr. Petro answer that.
Thank you. The prolonged flooding is due to the forward motion of the storm. It's expected to be a lot quicker, and it's a different setup than some of these other storms in the past that have resulted in prolonged flooding. So that's good news. It's moving quicker, and it's expected to move past the north of the state, certainly by Wednesday, and that should end the rain.
I think, too, most of our river levels are at normal levels or even below at this point, which is good. Yes, sir.
We've actually gotten a number of questions from our viewers about the state of emergency. To explain that a little bit more, when the state declares a state of emergency, what exactly does that mean? What changes? And the fact that there are other states that simultaneously have a state of emergency, what impact does that have?
Well, it allows us to spend certain funds to get ready to go. It activates personnel. It allows us to waive certain requirements. What I'll do is ask Mr. Sprayberry to come up and give you a lot of other specific actions that they take, which the emergency declaration allows. So, Mike?
Thank you, sir. And pretty much, Bo, the governor nailed it. When we have a state of emergency, that allows us to activate the National Guard, to put them on state active duty orders. It allows us to draw down from the state's disaster reserve fund so that we can take these resources and get them positioned so that we're able to respond adequately to the threat that faces us. And like the governor also said, we are able to do waivers like weight waivers for trucks, or time waivers for truck drivers and things like that for power crews that are coming in. So that's pretty much, it can do other things as well, but those are the primary things. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Governor John Camp, ABC 11. Just a couple of questions. You mentioned all the search and rescue teams that have been all the resources that have been deployed to the Gulf Coast are now back in the state. How many deployed? What kind of resources? What kind of resources back?
Mike, I'll let you take that.
Yes, sir. So what we did is we had 2 UH-60s from the North Carolina National Guard with their aviation crews. We also had rescue technicians from Charlotte Fire Department, Asheville Fire Department, and Transylvania County. And then we had 2 North Carolina Emergency Management Area Coordinators that do like overhead management of those teams. They flew back the other day. We had 5 swiftwater rescue teams from places like Raleigh, Greensboro, Fayetteville, Charlotte, Henderson County. And what they had is about 90 to 93 personnel. They've come back. We were able to track them with our common operating picture coming all the way back. And so they're back. They're in what we call quarters and out of service right now, making sure they're well rested for the upcoming mission.
You mentioned we're at a level 4 stage here at BDOC. For folks who may not know what that means, Mr. Gray, you went into a little bit of detail after you mentioned that, but maybe spell out a little bit better for us how many total there are and put that into some context.
Roger that. So there's 5 levels. 5 is just means that we're daily operations. We're just monitoring the situation. Level 4 means that we have all of our staff here and we're working on the emergency. And then it goes up with 3 to a 3 where you have some of our state partners in. 2, we have all of our state partners in. And then level 1, which we anticipate being at a level 1 on Sunday, at 0700 hours, 7 a.m. We'll have our federal partners here with us.
I'm Amanda Land with the RAL-TV. You talked about being concerned about resources being spread out, national resources, federal resources, Red Cross. I mean, how do you ensure when you've got what's going on in Texas, you've got what's going on in Florida, how do you ensure that North Carolina will get what it needs?
One of the things we talked to the Red Cross this morning, and John, when you asked the question about mobilization and moving back and forth, we have a lot of volunteers, particularly with the Red Cross, who went down to Texas. The Red Cross feels pretty good about their volunteer force, but you can't just have any volunteers. It's not good for people to just show up at a shelter. There has to be training that happens with that volunteer first. So what Mike and I were on the phone with the Red Cross today to talk about getting some training for people this weekend. And, you need mental health professionals, you need nurses, you need military people, you need people with some background who can come in for this 3-hour training over the weekend. And they're working on that. I think General Hunt with the National Guard has got a number of the National Guardsmen who are going to come in and to receive that training as well. And so we're feeling pretty good about that. Mike, you got anything to add to that?
I would just say, sir, that what we are also, we reach back to our federal partners, and there's also the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, and all 50 states are signatories to that compact, and so we can tap into resources nationwide. And for instance, like search and rescue, there is a large number of search and rescue teams that the federal force still has in reserve that we're able to tap into if needed.
Nick, I'm going to let you handle that.
Thanks so much. Yeah, so it's going to come ashore, is still forecast to be hurricane when it moves into the South Carolina coast. By the time it lifts north into North Carolina, it's expected to weaken to tropical storm status. And that's not unusual. When storms move inland, they weaken. So tropical storm is the expectation in terms of the status of the storm, the strength, by the time it reaches North Carolina. Yes, that's very typical for tropical cyclones to weaken as they move inland. Thank you.
And did you have these 3 staging areas? I think this is probably for you, Governor, I'm not sure, but you have these 3 staging areas, yet the track keeps switching, so you really don't know which of those 3 staging areas is going to be the most critical. So I guess you have to have them all ready to go.
That's right. And as the storm gets closer, then they will know where to focus. And just because that it might be a tropical storm strength doesn't mean this storm isn't going to be very dangerous because of the high winds, particularly if it goes inland. A lot of times people aren't used to hurricane force or tropical force winds, and there can be flash flooding. And so we still don't know for sure and are planning for everything. Do you want to add anything to that?
Sure, that's
okay.
Exactly right.
Wait, let me get somebody. Yes, that's good. This is tried and true information for families and businesses, things they need to do to get ready. And there are a lot of things that you need to consider, like some of your elderly parents and things that you could do for that, and your pets and your businesses, and all of the list of supplies that you need to take, and things that you can do to shore up your home and move debris out of your yard that might fly up and hit the house. Those kinds of things, it just reminds you all of the things that you need to do to get ready for a storm. And there are some updates on that site as well about the storm, in particular emergency issues. I think the emergency management social media feed is on, and road information as well.
How quickly does that update? I know it probably takes time to get that information to put it through to the
It's constantly being updated.
Mike.
Yes, ma'am. And so it's plugged into Secretary Trogdon's TIM system. So somebody wants to look and see how the roads are doing, you can go to that app. I think he probably has an app too, but it will take you to the TIM system. It will tell you as shelters open and close. You can look and see that. So it's real time, constantly being updated.
Mr. John. Spraberry mentioned that there would be planning for recovery after this. Obviously, thinking about it is one thing. Planning for it, active planning for it is another. Can you go into detail as far as what that means? Who you've gotten in touch with and how you're seeing recovery potential?
Well, one of the main things is housing and making sure that you get people places and that we work closely with FEMA to get that done. We also, in recovery, you're looking to make sure you get people into safe places, that you remove debris from roadsides, that you help the local governments do that. Other things that you want to add, Mike?
Well, you know, one of the mandates that the governor has given us is to make sure that we increase the amount of the portfolio of housing in the state, of affordable housing. And so that's, you know, it seems like, you know, when you see a lot of flooding happen or wind events and houses, you know, take on a lot of damages, you know, we want to make sure, and we are going to we're going to start with a conference call with what we call the Recovery Support Function for Housing tomorrow. And we will be in touch with folks like the Housing Finance Agency, FEMA, the volunteer organizations active during disasters, and we will work to have a plan in place for when the storm exits our state next week, that for folks that need a housing solution, we'll be able to match them up. And so it's a pretty tough job, but you know, you have to start. You can't wait until then to start planning, so we want to have that plan in place now.
Storms have put a spotlight on the problem of affordable housing that exists even without the storms. And one of the things we've got to do as a state is look at more affordable housing for people. Often in these storms, particularly with the flooding in low-lying areas, it's the people who can least afford it are the ones who get hit. So we're continuing to work with our Matthew recovery and focusing on affordable housing, and we want to be ready if there are any problems with this storm as well. Yes, sir. Mike, I'm going to let you talk about the shelters.
So sheltering is a county responsibility, and counties will open shelters as they see a need. And so right now we haven't heard any counties talking about evacuations or anything like that, but should they decide to set up a shelter, that's a decision that they'll make. And as far as the water, you'll see that prior to storms that the demand often, you know, outstrips the supply. And so we just ask for people to get what they need and you know, in order to keep them safe. And so, but I think that our suppliers are working hard to keep the stores stocked as hard as they can.
And that's the same for gasoline as well. You know, take what you need. We were fortunate that we didn't have as bad a shortage as we thought we could have had with Hurricane Harvey and the cutting off of the Colonial Pipeline. We declared a state of emergency very early and made sure that the supplies were open. And so right now that has not been an issue.
I also wanted to ask about price gouging law. I know it's obviously I saw some pretty terrible stories out of Florida.
Yeah.
$7.20 gallon of gas this morning. Anything like that? Have you heard about any concerns here in North Carolina?
Right now we have not. We'll stay in touch with the Attorney General's office, but each state has different laws on price gouging. And North Carolina's law is any price that is unreasonably excessive under the circumstances. So we ask people who think that price gouging has occurred, to report those to the Attorney General's office. One of the things we've found about our good price gouging law is that it works as a deterrent, and the merchants know that when a state of emergency has been declared, that people are going to be watching, people are going to have cell phones on prices, and they're going to be letting people know about it. And let's also remember that most businesses in North Carolina really help people. They aren't trying to gouge, and in fact, they give away things to people to help during storms. So we've got a great business community in our state. There are many times somebody who wants to take advantage of the situation, but our price gouging law has been pretty effective in stopping that, but we want people to report it. Yes. You know, I think the performance of the rescue and emergency personnel was good. I think North Carolina's experience over the years with flooding, with hurricanes and storms have helped us build a system that works, that is coordinated. One of the things that we're concerned about, though, is the funding for recovery at the end of the day, because you're talking billions of dollars in damages, and now with these hurricanes across the country, we've got Texas, Louisiana, we're going to have Florida, South Carolina, Georgia. There's going to be a lot of need out there, and I think the elected officials have to step up and recognize that this is an important function of government to help people recover for these storms. And it's been a struggle with Hurricane Matthew recovery. We've had some success in the funding, but we need more federal and state money to deal with Matthew, which happened a year ago. And we know that the recovery time for these other storms in these other states is going to take a long time. It's going to take years. I was living in Rocky Mount during Hurricane Floyd, and we know how long that took, a decade almost, to recover from Hurricane Floyd and the flooding in eastern North Carolina. So it is a long-term process, and it gets particularly harder when the cameras leave and the storm is over and people are suffering. We have to remember those people, and we have to remember to get them the help that they need. And I hope that Congress will be looking at that and our state legislature. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Oh my gosh, you have a great memory.
Yes, sir, I am.
I had something with McCrory once.
Grab this right here,
This is us? Okay. I understand there's a break. I mean, I'll stand at the podium. Mimi, I don't know if you can hear me. We're trying to get it. Yeah, we're trying to get it, so, okay. Okay, I think the transfer fast. I'm ready to go. 15 minutes. make sure you get you back your life. Nice mark.
Already dialed in.
I'm wondering if you working and I'm not sweating. Okay. 5:12, you were 10:20. Okay. Well, it's worth checking.
I'm sure you know, we just finished about 2 minutes ago, here with several of the responders to talk about what
Never had an issue with feedback.
some
Yeah.
impact from Irma, there's no doubt about that, but what that impact is will change day by day. Now, he says all the emergency resources are organized, again, we had a state emergency starting this morning in all 100 counties. They have emergency headquarters being set up in Houston, Greensboro, and Asheville, 310